Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the second web session today in the Learning Collective series. I'm Ann Nguyen, Marketing Specialist at Risk Inc. We're very excited to continue to offer these learning opportunities for our community as we are all still working from home, and that has been extended recently. And so we need to have as many opportunities as we can have to continue to sharpen the saw, as well as stay connected to the rest of our community and our industry leaders. And our next session right now is with Anthony Altieri. Hi, Anthony.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. And so Anthony, as you all may know him from various conferences and different sessions, is the owner of Omnis Solutions, which provides training material and services to those developing web-based learning products. They specialize in xAPI, SCORM, and Google Analytics integration with products ranging from online courseware to internet-connected devices. Omnis also works with IoT devices. They specialize in collecting information, sharing that information using RESTful APIs such as xAPI, which is our topic today, and building solid requirements for what you need your devices to actually do. And in today's session, Anthony is going to give us practical examples of how to use xAPI to create bespoke learning solutions. What a British word, bespoke.
It is.
And that this merely means customized to what your learning audience, your employees and your staff needs. So he's going to help us with understanding better on how to create that learning to better fit their needs. And today, we're going to get started here in just a second. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop it into the comments as we go along. We'll have some Q&A at the end of the session. And without further ado, let's get started. Get you. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining me this morning, this afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are. Thanks for joining. I am, as she said, Anthony Altieri. I am the idiot, the instructional developer for the Internet of Things. I love things. I love gizmos. I love doodads, even the occasional whatchamacallit. Gizmo. And I love these things because they give us data. They tell us the truth about the real world. They tell us what's going on around us. And once we have a full, rich understanding of what's going on around us, we can both react much more measuredly, much more rationally, but we can also manipulate what's going on around us. So I love data, ooey gooey, delicious data. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit more as we go on. What we're going to talk about today, adaptive learning and using xAPI to build adaptive learning. Now, we're not going to talk a lot about we're not going to talk about the mechanics of adaptive learning or how to build things that are adaptive from a philosophical standpoint so much. What I'm actually going to show you is the mechanics of using xAPI to collect and use data. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. They're very simple examples that could very easily be expanded upon. And I'm actually going to share the source code for one of those examples because you know me, I'm a giver. I always give you my source code when you look at some things. So first things first, the legal mumbo jumbo, all opinions and suggestions are mine and mine alone and do not reflect those of my employer, this conference, or really any single human being who's ever lived. Why would you think the way I do? Why would you want to be like me? I do not in any way, shape, or form endorse any particular vendor or their products. I am a huge techno hippie. I love open source. I will show you a product in the Veracity LRS. Doesn't show me I endorse them for you. It's a good product for me to use. I always like to start with a quote because I'm one of those people. This one comes from Grand Island, Nebraska. Yeah, Grand Island, Nebraska. It's Edwards Deming. Without data, you're just another person.
Hey, Anthony, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think because the speaker is on the computer, if we can get you a little bit closer to I don't know if your computer that's possible, your audio is going in and out, and I want people to be able to hear your info. It could be because you're so exuberant and presenting.
That could be too.
There we go. That was a little bit better. So
Is this
sorry to
better?
interrupt. Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. I was complaining about data. I was loving data. Data is awesome. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. Um, Without facts, it's really easy to look at something and say, "Hey, I think this is great," or "Hey, we really need this product." If you don't have the data to substantiate that, you may find yourself going down a rabbit hole with no reward at the bottom, maybe nothing there to find. One of the guys I work with likes to say, "Is there a there there? There's nowhere to go. Why are you looking at it?" And the data will tell you where you need to go. Especially when you're looking at something that's in depth. Software isn't judgmental. It isn't going to look at someone and say, "Oh, well, I think you need this." It's going to look at the data and make decisions based on facts. And the fact says, you're remiss in this training, or you haven't made enough cold calls, or whatever metric. We have to have that data. Data is key. So let's talk about adaptive learning. First and foremost, adaptive learning is marketing claptrap. It is a nothing word. I'm going to make a lot of people angry with that. I'm okay with that. Here's a problem. Adaptive learning, in the words of Harry Nilsson, is kind of an arrow that points in every direction, points in no direction at all. And that's the problem with adaptive learning. There's no real definition. What makes something adaptive? And there's a lot of ways to make things adaptive. And in my experience, in my years, I've worked with 3 companies that have come in and claimed to be experts in adaptive learning. And I walked away from all 3 with 0 confidence. I'm not going to lie. They would focus on one part of it or one aspect, or they would focus on the marketing hype, but have no real substance. And that leads to a problem, because when somebody says adaptive learning, well, what does that mean? Think of the phrase, "I need a door." I need to go get a door. I need a door. Well, you need a front door? You need a garage door? That's a door. What do you need? What needs do you have that need to be fulfilled? And again, what data is going to support that? So you really need to dial down when somebody says, "Hey, we need an adaptive learning product." What does that mean? Get details, ask questions. Generally speaking, adaptive learning content or adaptive product is self-tailors based on data, either performance data from the real world. You can base it on performance in other courses, thanks largely to xAPI. What we're used to probably the most are branching scenarios, or branching activities, I guess I should say. For example, a pretest. We've all used pretests in our courses. If you answer these questions right, you don't have to take this lesson. You can skip to the next one. That's a very common one. Branching scenarios. Think of the old Choose Your Own Adventure books from the 80s. How many of us read those? And that's why they don't sell today, actually. But if you think about those, you chose what to do next. They were branching scenarios, and a lot of us have used those. Those are probably the 2 most common forms of adaptive learning. There are others out there based on testing, based on how your tests have gone through, or what your test scores have been like. We're going to have you take this other class, or this class. We're going to have you retest whatever based on testing assignments and things like that, or testing assessments rather, things like that. So there's a lot to it. It's not just one thing. There's not one attribute that suddenly magically makes something adaptive. There's a lot of pieces to it. The reason it's so sexy, the reason everybody wants adaptive learning, is it lowers the operational training cost by lowering the seat time. I only have to have you in the seat for as long as I have to have you in the seat. You don't have to take this lesson on something you've done for 50 years, 20 years, 30 years. You just take the part of the lesson, or the lessons, or the part of the course, or part of the activity, whatever, however you break it up. You just take the part that matter to you. And that can be very, very attractive to an organization. So again, the pros, it lowers consumer seat time. Because I'm adapting this to your needs, even if you go with a simple pretest, If you pretest out of this lesson, well, that's a 30-minute lesson you don't have to sit through. So it's going to lower your seat time. It focuses the seat time that I do have you there on the parts you need to know. So again, instead of making you review things that you've done a million times, and we've all been there, we can move on to the things that will actually help you be successful. Can lower the overall cost of training and performance support. I'm going to come back to that. I know what you're thinking. I will come back to it. It will lower the operational costs of this. And if you watched Ajay Pangarkar's session right before me, he talks about operational costs. He's brilliant. He's a great guy. If you didn't watch it, go back and watch that session because it's absolutely fantastic. I'm sure it was absolutely fantastic. I haven't seen it because I was getting ready for this one. But I know he always does a great job. And one of his hallmarks is look at the operational cost. Don't just look at the purchase price. Look at that long tail. And this is where adaptive comes in. Again, we're lowering the seat time. We're lowering the parts that you actually have to look at. This lowers the operational cost. So year after year after year, we're subjecting our consumers, our employees, our students to less seat time. We're subjecting them to less us, let's be honest. And overall, then, that puts more revenue back into the organization. Remember, we're training. Our job is the same. At the end of the day, our job is the same as every other department in the organization to support the organization, to support that revenue and either increase revenue or lower operational costs. Generally, our job is to lower operational costs. This can also help lower the cost to update and maintain the course. If you have parts of the course no one is taking, get rid of them. There's no reason to update those. There's no reason to maintain them. Also, and maybe more importantly, if there are parts that people are taking a lot, maybe you need to focus on those. Maybe you need to bolster those and make them a little better, make them a little stronger. The cons, the initial development can be a lot more expensive. It takes a lot of data to build a good, rich, immersive, adaptive experience. I worked with Nick Floro at SealWorks a couple years back on a adaptive project that used branching scenarios. You want to map out all of those branches. Anything that the student can do, you want to map out and know what paths are available. When he did that, he put it on an Excel spreadsheet that when printed was 30 feet long. This thing was huge. And it took a lot of work to build that. Now it made a fantastic course. It made a course that thousands of students have taken and it's gotten amazingly great reviews. But it was a lot of upfront work and a lot of upfront cost. Now again, long tail, we're getting the benefit of that now. But there's a lot more effort up front. The other problem is you may not be able to make it as adaptive as you want. Unfortunately, we do have state, federal, local regulations. We have OSHA. We also have labor contracts that you need to be careful of. We ran into a situation a few years back where we tried to create an adaptive program. And unfortunately, the labor agreement was written such that if we gave 10 hours of training to one employee in that pay group, we had to give the same training to everyone in that pay group. So even the guys who were there 20 years who easily tested out, we still had to train them. We still had to give them that same time. Nobody found that out until after we had spent all that money to develop the software, and we couldn't use it. So you definitely want to take a look at that. Another catch that has come up recently, continuing education units. You need to work with the authority by which you're issuing those CEUs because sometimes they're based on contact hours. So if your contact hours vary a lot depending on the adapting, whatever. If it varies a lot based on that, your CEU values could change. Well, now how do you award those CEUs? So just some things to keep in mind. So looking at the mechanics of adaptive learning using xAPI, the biggest thing you're going to need are xAPI queries. Queries are how you send a request to the LRS to get information out of it. You would send a request, what courses has Anthony passed, or more specifically, probably what courses has Anthony completed? And that can be troublesome. You need to be a little careful in how you ask that question, because a lot of the times you're going to send statements that will say Anthony completed whatever course. The result, successful, will be true, and then whatever score is there. So you can't ask, what did Anthony pass? You're going to have to ask, what did Anthony complete? Look at that list of courses and pull out the ones where successful is true. This also means you have to know what data is available. As you're looking at your statements, or as you're thinking about building your queries, you need to look at your statements. And you need to know, well, do all of those statements have in their result element, do they have successful equals true? Do they have a score? Is there a way to know, yeah, Anthony completed this, did he pass? If that information's not available, you can't use that as a metric. You can't use that to adapt your product. You know he completed it, but you don't know if he passed or not. You don't know how well he did, or you may not know how well he did. So you need to look at what data is available. You need to know what data will answer the questions you want to ask. So I'll pick on Ajay Pingarkar because he's not here to defend himself. Let's say Ajay took a tax course. I'm building a tax course for this year, and I want to know, did Ajay pass a previous tax course? So I'm going to send a query. Agent equals Ajay Pingarkar. Verb is going to be completed. I'm going to issue that query. I'm going to get all these things back, and I'm going to find out that that Ajay did in fact pass a tax course. Okay, great. What other information do I need? Taxes change every year, right? Well, if Ajay passed that course 3 years ago, do I need to know that? Will that change how I make this course adaptive? For example, if it's a tax course and he hasn't taken one in 3 years, there's probably some update lessons I need to give him on the new tax code. Whereas if he took it this year, then I don't need, he took this year's tax code, I don't need to give him the update. Or maybe I need to give him a different update. So you need to look at what data you need to make the decisions you want to make. Make sure it's there, make sure it's available. And then you can start building things. One thing I always add this, people who've heard me speak, you're probably sick of hearing me say this, xAPI is case sensitive. I'm sorry, we didn't think about that it made sense at the time. Sorry. When you're sending activity IDs, or when you're sending queries for activity IDs, you must use the same case as what's in the statement, or it will not return. I may or may not know someone who lost about 5 hours of work trying to figure that out one afternoon. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, and the reason I talk about this is kind of a reciprocal problem. You need to build your queries based on what data is available, but you need to make that data available when you're building your statements based on how are you going to query it later. So it's kind of a snowball effect. Whenever you're writing statements, always keep in mind, how am I going to use this data later? What queries are going to be sent to pull this data out of the LRS? Let's talk about this statement API, xAPI. Everybody knows I did this. It's all about me. The statement API, think of it as like a diary. I did this. Dear LRS, today, Ajay Pingarkar passed his tax accounting class. Ajay is going to yell at me on Twitter later. This is kind of what the statement API is. I did this. Anthony completed whatever course. And that's very useful. It's great to have. You can save data in whatever granularity you want. Ajay completed tax accounting course. Great, fantastic. Ajay completed tax accounting course with a score of 95. Ajay's a smart cookie. He's going to score well. Okay, great. Ajay completed tax accounting course. Successful equals true. Score of 95. He passed. Great. Oh, great. You can keep adding as much data as you want. And again, as you're building that, you have to think about what data am I going to need later? And this gets, again, when you're building adaptive programming, any kind of adaptive course, you really need to make sure you have all the data you're going to need to make these decisions later on. So you really want to keep all of that in mind. One thing about the statement API, we're going to talk about another API here in just a second. Statement APIs, the queries can get kind of complicated in that they're kind of forced to be very simple. There are only certain parts of the statement you can query on. You can't, again, I can't ask, has Ajay passed a tax accounting class? I can ask if Ajay completed a course, and then I can look at the list of statements that come back and pull out the ones that are tax accounting courses, and then of those, pull out the ones where successful equals true, score equals 80 or higher, whatever metric you're using. But I can't just ask which ones did he pass unless I send a statement, Ajay passed a tax accounting course. So again, when you're building these statements, think about how they're going to be queried, because you can't write those queries as granular as you sometimes want to. But xAPI has a solution for that called the agent profile. There's actually 3 other APIs to the xAPI. There's the statement API we just talked about. There's also the agent profile API, the activity profile API, and the state API. These 3 come together to form the document APIs. The agent profile API is fantastic for this kind of thing. And we're going to see 2 examples of why you might use agent over statement when you're building some adaptive class or some adaptive product. The agent profile collects data about the person, about that agent, about my activities, not necessarily about the activity that I completed, that I did, but about me. And you can save anything you want. There really is no format to the document APIs except that they must be stored as JSON, JavaScript object notation, and they use keyed pairs. And we'll take a look at an example of one of those here in just a few minutes. Outside of that, they're pretty much free form. You can save whatever you want. You can save my favorite movie, my favorite cheese, my favorite NFL team, which if you don't know already, I don't know what to tell you. And this can be great. And this can be a great way to save course data. And again, we'll take a look at why in just a moment. In fact, let's do that now. So again, real quick here, this is the LRS that I'm using. It's Veracity Learning, lrs.io. Again, I'm using this as their example. They're a great company. I don't necessarily endorse them or say they're the best company for you. Everybody's needs differ, but this is the one we're going to use. So the first example here is setting basic user preferences. I'm going to warn you. This is a video. It's an open source movie called Sintel. It's open source. It's free. It's distributed under the Creative Commons. It is also a movie that if you have a pet, you might not want to watch the second half. I use this as an example because it's absolutely gorgeous animation. These guys are absolutely amazing. There are not enough superlatives in the world to describe these guys. And it also helps illustrate this point. But it does make Old Yeller look like an episode of the Smurfs. I'm not going to lie. So if you have pets, maybe just watch the first half. But in this case, we have this video, and I'm just going to do this. It's asking for my name. Now, it's asking for my name because I'm not associated with an LMS or anything from which I could get user information. So it's just asking me. So I'm going to say Bob. I'm going to hit play. And let me just skip ahead. Now here, I don't know if you guys can hear this or not. They are talking. You'll notice there's no subtitles. So if I come over here, captions are off. Okay. So I want to set user preferences. Now this can be really great. This can be incredibly helpful Because with a simple little bit of xAPI code, you can set the subtitle preferences, you can set the volume preference, mute preference, whatever, for all the videos in your class, or in fact, all your classes, with just a really quick xAPI query using the agent profile. So here, I'm going to say Bob, and Bob speaks French. So we want the French subtitles. I'm going to hit submit. And this is just telling me, this is just a debug statement that the statement was sent. Sachin, am I saying that correctly? Yes, this is being recorded. So you will get to come back and watch this later. So now if I refresh this, I'm going to hit play. Now I've got the subtitles. It sent the statement information up to the LRS that I want, or well, Bob wants French subtitles. When this page loaded, it issued a query, pulled that information that I want French, and now it's showing them. So how does it do that? Well, here's Bob. This is Bob's profile that I just created a moment ago. And here you'll see, here's the actor ID. The profile ID is Bob CDN Learning and it's application JSON. Here's the big thing. This has created two key pairs, sub_lang, which is set to equal French or contains French, and the name Bob, because everyone needs a name. So here's what's happening on this page. We are going to look at code for a moment. It's okay. It's very simple code. I'm going to walk you through it. It's all right. Here's where it's actually sending the query to get the agent information. And that's basic run-of-the-mill code. You can copy and paste that a million times. Here's the code where it's actually pulling the subtitle information or subtitle selection. And basically what it's doing is it's saying, okay, if there is an agent, if that query that's up here, if that query pulled back an agent, then do the rest of this. If there was no agent, then short out, say no agent found, and don't select a subtitle. Within the agent, look for a key called sub_lang. If there's an element there called sub_lang, let's take a look at that and extract some information. If not, no language is selected. Here's the else. No language selected. Don't return any information. Don't select the subtitle. So if there is a sublanguage, pull that sublanguage and return that as the track number. That's it. That's the entirety of that code. That's the entirety of what makes this work, really. There's a little bit of code down here with the HTML5 player. But realistically, this is where the magic happens. And that's 10 lines of code. It's very simple. And behind the scenes, this is how a lot of adaptive learning should be. You don't really want to make a lot of incredibly complicated heuristics on how decisions are being made. You want to make that data as simple and as accessible as possible. In this case, yeah, we're using it for preferences, but I could just as easily use that same code to say, has Anthony seen this video before? Has Anthony taken this course and passed this course? If he hasn't, then I need him to take that course before he can watch this video. All of that is going to build on this basic code right here. All the mechanics, everything. Think of it as Legos. Think of the most beautiful Lego structure you've ever seen. It all comes down to the same 4x2 bricks, just put together in very creative ways. That's how most content development is. And here's your basic brick. And from this, you can build as complex or as simple as you want. It's a great foundation. Let's take a look at another example. Let's take a look at the right example. Okay. So this is a single page that is an example of adaptive learning or adaptive content. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to pick on my buddy Craig. And again, it's asking for the username because it's not associated with an LMS or anything. So it's not pulling the username from anywhere. So I have to enter it. If you were to build this into a course, you're probably getting your username from somewhere already. So I'm kind of, again, I kind of have to short circuit that. This is going to take a look at 3 videos. Also open source, also part of the Blender project, also Creative Commons, also amazingly well done. These guys deserve just award after award. They should win awards for all the awards they win. So let's play this. We're just going to play the first few seconds. I don't want to spoil it for you. And it's called Commandants. This one is called Llama Drama. And there's our friend Cora the llama. I'm going to skip to the end. Okay. So now this video has been played all the way to the end. And yeah, I know. Now I just hit refresh and I entered the same name, but notice now we see a different video. Video number 2, the Grand Dilemma. Llama puns, we have them. What's happening here is the page is asking, has Anthony played the first video? And if we take a look here, or has Craig played the first video? Here's the statement that was generated the first time I loaded that page and I played the video. And here you'll see completed. Here's Craig at example.com, completed. And here's the ID. I'm using the YouTube link for the video. And number 1, Llama Drama, the first video in the Commandants series. So what's happening is the page is issuing a query to see, has Anthony played this video? And if he has, or has Craig played this video? And if he has, show the second video. And I'm going to hit play. Commandants. Again, you can see there's Cora, definitely a different video. Again, I'll skip ahead. I don't want to spoil it for you. And if I come back here to statements, there's a second statement. Oops, wrong one. The Grand Dilemma. And the description's wrong, but the IDs are right. So again, Craig at example.com, completed, the Grand Dilemma, the second video. So what do we think is going to happen if I hit refresh? Type in Craig. Commandants, Lamigos. Again with the llama puns. And again, I'll hit play just to show you. There's our friend Cora. Different video. So in one single page, what's happening is the content or the page is sending a request. It's sending an xAPI query to say, hey, has Craig played this video? Or has Craig completed this video? And if he has, okay, what about the second one? Okay, what about the third one? And eventually, if I do this, congratulations, you completed all 3 videos. That's your reward. Again, please go check out these videos. Please support these guys. They have given these videos to the open source community for schlubs like me to use in these presentations. And they are amazing. They're really great, beautiful animation. Please support all of these creators. But again, what's happening is it's just sending a query against the statements. Now, here's the problem. One of 2 things is going to happen. Either I'm sending a query for everything that Craig completed. I'm going to get a list of X many statements. I could get 3 statements. I could get 1 statement. I could get 5,000 statements. Then I have to look at each one to see, is one of these object IDs one of the ones I'm looking for? If it is, go to the next video. Or I'm issuing a query for the first one specifically. Did he play that? He did? Okay, now I'm going to send a second query for the second one specifically, and then another query for the third one. So I'm doing a lot of work there. There's a lot of data moving back and forth. There's a lot of data changing hands. And that can be problematic because it adds to the load time of the page, especially if I have to issue 4, 5, 6 queries to get the data I need. That's going to make this page take forever to load. And keep in mind, I'm not ragging on Veracity. Their turnaround time for me is somewhere around 0.7 seconds from the time from the time I issue the query to the time I get the data back is around 0.7 seconds on a bad day. So I'm not ragging on these guys. That's actually pretty much what I get with Storm Cloud, Watershed, anyone else. But if you do that 4, 5, 6 times, you're adding, now it's 5 seconds of me just looking at a blank page waiting for it to draw. So you need to think about that. So here's another option. Here's the same page, or apparently the same page. This one uses the agent profile to store the data and make the decision to move on. So I'm going to refresh this so it asks for my name. And I was picking on AJ before, so we'll use him again. So Ajay's a great guy. We're going to hit play. Here's Cora. Okay, and I'm going to let this play out. And I'm going to come to statements, and there's nothing here for Ajay. There's nothing there. But if I come to agent profile, now here's Ajay at devlearn.com, so you can tell when I wrote this. And here's a key, movies watched, and I've created an array that includes llama drama at 480p.mp4. So now I only have to issue one query, pull Ajay's user profile or agent profile, which now means, remember before when we were talking about the granularity of those statements where Ajay completed llama drama, successful is true, score of whatever, the time he took it, how long he was on each question, which answers he got right, wrong, all this data now can be replaced with one element. It's a lot less data changing hands, which makes the processing a lot faster, makes the decision making a lot easier. There's less to wade through to get to the data you need. Now, if I come back here and reload and hit OK, it pulled the agent profile. It saw that llama drama was listed, so it goes to the second one, the Grand Llama. And again, I'll hit play here real quick so we can just see this. And again, that's the second movie. Oops. We'll go ahead. And now here's the agent profile for Ajay's been updated with both movies. So now, whereas with the other example, I kind of had two choices. I could either query for anything Ajay had completed and go through that list, or I could issue two queries. Did he complete the first one? Did he complete the second one? And then move on. I'm still issuing the exact same first query, the exact same one query that I did on the first page. Nothing's changed. I just issue the query, look at that array. Are these three things in that array? No? Okay, show the first one, and make my decision making based on that. So using the agent profile can be incredibly powerful when you're using adaptive learning, because this is a great way to store exactly the data you need in exactly the format you're going to need it. And you don't have to worry about all the other stuff that goes with the statement API, which, again, don't get me wrong, the statement API is fantastic. I love it. It offers a huge amount of power. But the agent profile can give you a lot of the same power without all the scaffolding that comes with making a fully formed statement. So it's really great. And actually here, we'll even take a look at the source code for this. And again, it's not very difficult. Here's the same query to pull the agent, same as it was before. And here's get vid, look at the agent. If there's an agent, look for movies watched in that agent profile. Now, look at each entry of the movies watched, and if any of those is in the array or the list of movies that I'm looking for, then return whatever the last one in that list is. Here it's 62 to 82. It's 20 lines of code with a lot of white space. I could probably cut that line number in half. And two, I've also added a lot of debug statements there. So again, this is not complicated code at all. Development of this does not have to be difficult. That's the biggest thing with xAPI. Everybody thinks, oh, the development is so difficult as they're so involved. It doesn't have to be. It can be incredibly, incredibly simple if you can monitor, or if you can model that data the way you want it to be. So I'm going to come back here with some considerations. And do we have any questions coming in? I don't see any. Oops. I'm going into the wrong window. Okay. All right. So considerations. What are the minimum requirements of your training? Again, this cannot be understated. If you want to make adaptive learning, make sure you can cut out what you want to cut out. Federal, state, local registration or regulations, whoever my dogs are barking at. Always listen to your golden retrievers. Labor agreements, CEUs, college. If you're doing something for college credit, does the college have a requirement? All of these things play into it. And the worst thing you can do is say, oh, you know what? We're going to make this pretest so you can test out of this lesson, and then find out that, no, you actually, OSHA requires you to provide that specific lesson of training every year to your employees. And that has happened to people, unfortunately. So make sure you actually can remove the parts you want to remove if you can substantiate that the person doesn't need that training. So you can base the tailoring on multiple data sources if needed. One of the neat things about xAPI, we looked at examples just using either user preferences or work from other courses, or reloading the same page. With xAPI, though, you can pull from other sources. So, for example, if you load your sales information into your LRS, that's all queryable now. So if you wanted to make a course on sales, okay, well, I know that Tom is making 50 cold calls a day. Tom obviously does not need to know how to find a source for cold calls or how to dial or how to use the software or whatever. He's doing 50 a day. He's covered. But if Bill is only making 2 cold calls a day, he may be struggling. So maybe we have to look at that. Well, we can base that on actual performance data from the real world. How are you actually working in your job? We can start to pull all that information, which makes us really, really great. And now you can adapt your courses, again, based on the real world, what's actually happening out there. Planning ahead will make things a whole lot easier. I told you about the 30-foot Excel spreadsheet. It sounds scary because it was scary. It was huge. Nick did an amazing job. Again, the guys at SealWorks, fantastic. It was money well spent. It was effort well spent, because now with all of that documentation and all of those paths planned out, coding it, I just showed you the code. It's 10, 20 lines of code. It's real easy. Writing the code for that was incredibly simple because we already knew the decision points. We knew the data that needed to be made. We had all that documented out. It was fantastic. And there is no magic bullet. They lied. Again, you see these articles, oh, adaptive learning is real easy. You can do it in 5 minutes. No, you can't. I'm sorry, you can. Not if you want to do it well. You have to take that time to plan ahead. Look at all your decision points. Look at all the paths. How can these paths break? What are the different branches? Do all of the branches end logically? Do they end where you think they do? It takes work. It's worth it if you do it. If you spend the time, you're going to come out with an amazing product. But it's not a 5-minute thing. It does take time. Some learning record stores. I usually try to share this list. Veracity is in red because that's the one I used in this demonstration. All of them are great. One thing about learning record stores I will say is if you're in a position you're asking, hey, what's the best learning record store? If someone comes back and says, oh, Veracity is the best and that's the one you should use, and they ask you no questions at all, don't listen to that person. Unless they work for Veracity. Then, yeah, of course they're going to say they're the best. Same with StormCloud, same with Watershed, same with Yet, same with Learning Locker, same with Grassblade. Same with, Duncan's here in the chat. I'll pick on him. Duncan's going to tell you Risk is the best LMS because he works there. Of course he is. Get the system that is best for you and your needs. And everybody's needs are different. So invest the time and find out what your needs are and talk to people who actually show an interest in you and helping you meet your needs. This is one of those times where, yes, it is all about you. Oops. If you want to learn more about xAPI development, I have a series of articles on learningsolutionsmag.com. Take a look. There's 5 articles that will walk you step by step through sending not only your first statements, but your first queries. And that's all available for free. It's open source. Go nuts. Take a look at that. And even if you're not a developer, even if you're not a programmer, it still behooves you to take a look at this and learn how things work under the hood, because it'll help inform your decisions on how you design things. What data do I need? How can I get that data? If you understand the mechanics of what's going on, under the hood, what's going on behind the curtain, you can make those decisions. You can make sure that data is available. It makes your life a lot easier. You don't have to learn to be a programmer. You don't have to learn to write the next Google. But having some familiarity with the process of what's happening, you don't necessarily need to know the function calls, but just understand the process of what's going on behind the scenes will make your life a lot easier. Again, no, it's not always easy, but trust me, it's worth it. If you want to learn more about the Experience API, I have a course on LinkedIn Learning. If you use this coupon or this link that applies a coupon, you will get 30 days free. You can take my course, or you could take Ajay's course, that guy that they brought in before me. Nobody remembers. And Ajay does have some amazing courses. So after you're done taking mine, go take some of his. And with that, Anna, I'm going to bring it back to you for any questions that have come up. And
hello, I'm back. That was a very informative xAPI data-driven, code-driven presentation. Thank you. And of course, Duncan was chiming in with some different comments and whatnot, and understandably so. All of a sudden, the internet was connected or was disrupted. So we've had some internet issues, or he has. I didn't. So your session went just fine. We've had a few viewers hop in. Devlin Peck said that he can confirm that your articles are very helpful. I will share those links again to the articles that you had on the Learning Solutions magazine, as well as a link for the LinkedIn Learning. And thank you for the coupon for the 30 days free use. And I know that Ajay will appreciate that as well. I did tweet to him while you were in your session, letting him know what you said about him. So I expect some banter back and forth on Twitter. But thank you again today, Anthony, and sharing your knowledge. And yes, to Sachin's question, this video will remain here on our page so you can catch the replay. And for those who are tuning in and catching the replay, please feel free to continue to pop in your questions and comments. We will make sure that Anthony gets the questions and is able to get back with you. I will also share on Twitter, because Anthony is a huge Twitter user. I will share his contact information and other things on Twitter, so you can absolutely get in touch and connect with him on Twitter as well.
And the start,
we've got some friendly banter here.
The Canadian-American War has begun.
Right here on the Risk Learning Collective series. Thank you, gentlemen. You guys have made my morning, that's for sure. So thank you again to Anthony. Tune in this afternoon as we continue with our third session of the day with Tammy Rutherford from Rusticity Software. And I'm getting tongue-tied with everybody.
Who, by the way, also an amazingly great presenter. I've seen her speak a number of times. There's going to be a mountain of great information. So 100% stick around. It's 100% worth watching.
Absolutely. All of the presenters and the sessions have been wonderful, and I'm really excited to be able to continue this series so that we can continue to help our learning community out there while we are all going through what is an unprecedented event, global event, basically. And so as much as we can possibly help you guys to continue to improve with your professional development and other information, we are here for you. So thank you again, Anthony. Thank you for everyone for tuning in, and we'd love to hear your comments and questions. So feel free to pop them into the comment section, as I mentioned, and we'll get back with you. Thank you again. Bye, everyone.
Bye, folks.